particular press conference in which I am going to cancel some regular season games. We worked hard to avoid an outcome that's bad for our fans, bad for our players, and bad for our clubs. I want to assure our fans that our failure to reach an agreement was not due to a lack of effort by either party. The players came here for 9 days. They worked hard. They tried to make a deal, and I appreciate their effort. Our committee of club representatives committed to the process. They offered compromise after compromise and hung in past the deadline to make sure that we exhausted every possibility of reaching an agreement before the cancellation of games. So far, the parties have failed to achieve their mutual goal of reaching an agreement. The unfortunate thing, maybe the most unfortunate thing, is that agreement, the one we've offered to our players, offered huge benefits for our fans and for our players. We have listened to the Players Association throughout the process. A primary goal of the Players Association has been to increase pay for younger players. I said in Orlando, and I'll say it again, we agree and share that goal. We offered to raise the minimum salary to $700,000, an increase of $130,000 from last year. We offered to create an annual bonus pool of $30 million for our very best young players. In total, we're offering nearly a 33% raise to almost 2/3 of Major League players, and we're adding more than $100 million annually in additional compensation for this younger player group. The proposal also addressed player and fan concerns about issues like service time and competition. Baseball would, for the first time, have a draft lottery, the most aggressive lottery in professional sports. Also, for the first time ever, we agreed to an incentive system to encourage clubs to promote top prospects on opening day. We also proposed that the first and second place finishers in Rookie of the Year voting in each league would receive a full year of service no matter how long they were in the major leagues. The MLBPA asked us to make free agency more robust. For the first time ever, we agreed to eliminate draft pick compensation, a change that the MLBPA has sought for decades. On the competitive balance tax, we offered a significantly larger first-year increase than in the last two agreements, bearing in mind that the competitive balance tax is the only mechanism in our agreement that protects some semblance of a level playing field among the clubs. The international draft would have more fairly allocated talent among the clubs and reduced abuses in some international markets. We also listened to our fans. The expanded playoffs would bring the excitement of meaningful September baseball and postseason baseball to fans in more markets. While we preferred the 14-team format, when the format became a significant obstacle, we listened to the players' concerns and offered a compromise by accepting the 12-team format. Finally, we offered a procedural agreement that would allow for the timely implementation of sorely needed rules like the pitch timer and the elimination of shifts to improve the entertainment value of the game on the field. And we agreed to the universal DH. So what's next? The calendar dictates that we're not going to be able to play the first two series of the regular season, and those games are officially canceled. We're prepared to continue negotiations. We've been informed that the MLBPA is headed back to New York, meaning that no agreement is possible until at least Thursday. As such, camps could not meaningfully operate until at least March 8th, leaving only 23 days before the scheduled opening day. The clubs and our owners fully understand just how important it is to our millions of fans that we get the game on the field as soon as possible. To that end, we want a bargain and we want an agreement with the Players Association as quickly as possible. You gonna do them or am I? Okay, Hannah.
I got two. Like the first one.
Well, you only get one.
Well, I'm gonna try it for a second. Okay, so this has been out there a little bit, this phrase, and I just wanted to be super clear. Was this your last, best, and final offer in a legal sense, or are you willing to figure out in-house?
We never used the phrase last, best, and final offer with the union. We said to them that it was our best offer prior to the deadline to cancel games. Our negotiations are deadlocked right now, but I'm not going to get in. You know, that's different than using the legal term impasse, and I'm not going to do that.
If it's not your last, best, and final offer, why would they have accepted it? If they knew they could get something better later?
Yeah, look, I think that take it or leave it in a negotiation is not something that I think is usually productive. I think always at the end, there's a little wiggle room somewhere, and I think that we'd like to keep the idea that we're willing to go back to the table and figure out whether we can make an agreement.
What do you say to the fans who say they're fed up with both sides of this and the possible loss of revenue from them not buying tickets?
Ron, the only thing I can say is that from the perspective of the Commissioner's Office and the clubs, we are doing our very, very best to try to reach an agreement. Unfortunately, it's not something that's solely within our control. It takes two parties to reach an agreement, and we will continue to be committed to that process.
What timeline? Is there another session scheduled? Who goes first? The owners with the players, vice versa?
All I can say, nothing scheduled right now. And we made a proposal this afternoon. I believe, without exception, every topic, we have made the last proposal. Every single issue in the basic agreement, we have made the last proposal. You draw your own conclusion as to who ought to go next.
When you guys are, weighing these offers with the owners and talking things through, how much, if at all, do you weigh the financial impact on people who aren't in the room, the workers at the stadiums who get affected, and obviously the fans?
Yeah, look, I think that the concern about our fans is at the very top of our consideration list, followed closely by places like where we're standing, where people's livelihood depends on baseball, spring training baseball, and certainly an important part of the calculus for us and for our owners. Hey, James.
Hey, Rob. Could you explain the league's position on why you say cancellation of games and why not, say, reschedule or at least make the hope to still fit the full season in?
Yeah, we have a first-time situation in terms of the loss of regular season games. We've never, since we've gone to interleague play every day, we've never canceled games. So if you think about the way that the schedule works, every single day you have an interleague series where those teams are not back together enough to make rescheduling feasible.
So do you think the pay, full pay and service time will now be something you have to negotiate with the union and players?
Yeah, I think that our position is that games that are not played, players will not get paid for. John.
Rob, obviously there were some good things in the deal for the players, including over a 20% rise for the minimum players, the minimum paid players. However, the CBT, how do you explain? It was 210 million, right? So you're raising it to 220 million. That's less than a 5% rise, and then it's repeated the next subsequent years at $220 million. So it's basically only a 5% rise over 3 years. They would tell you that inflation is up 7% now. Their salaries have stagnated, and obviously they wouldn't like that part of the deal.
Look,
How do you explain that?
Well, I think that it's important to look at the pattern of increases in the CBT thresholds over the last several agreements, and I think the proposal that we made is right in line with the type of increases we've seen in the past. I think you also need to remember that the last 5 years been very difficult years from a revenue perspective for the industry given the pandemic. So, you know, this is, and last, look, we have a payroll disparity problem. And to weaken the only mechanism in the agreement that's designed to promote some semblance of competitive balance is just something that I don't think the club group is prepared to do right now. Look, I didn't take, I know where the clubs are. I know they are 100% behind the proposal that was made and the decision to cancel games given where we are in the negotiation. Hey, Bob.
Progress made, we couldn't have made a deadline these last couple of days. Is there any thoughts about having another deadline in the future?
Look, we're in the process of, we went through a really long 9 or 10 days. We had a really late night last night and not a particularly productive day today. We need to regroup and figure out how we're going to move the process forward. That's the best I can do for you.
Hey, Rob, understanding that deadlines create urgency, you locked out the players to jumpstart the negotiations. It feels like real bargaining went on just in the last 24 to 36 hours. I'm sure people are wondering why not over the last three months or even longer to get to a point where you're not necessarily canceling games because there's some momentum here.
Yeah, I think the best answer to that question is the last 10 days. We've been here ready to bargain, full committees, owners, players for 10 days, and it got going 2 days before the deadline. You know, that's the best explanation I can give you.
Rob, is the sport in a more perilous position now than it was in '94, '95 because of the number of entertainment options that are out there, how easy it is for people to turn to a Netflix or anything on their cell phone?
Yeah, look, the entertainment market today is different than 1994. My deepest hope is that we get an agreement quickly, we're back on the field, and you know, we get back into that market and compete effectively.
Rob, you've said many times you see yourself as a deal maker. You take pride in the previous agreements you've made. So how much do you see this outcome as reflecting on you as commissioner now?
Look, the difficult thing about this, if it was solely within my ability or the ability of the clubs to get an agreement, we'd have an agreement. The tough thing about this process is it takes both parties to make an agreement. I'm really disappointed that we didn't make an agreement, and I'm really committed to doing everything possible to get one.
Ken's last day on the job. He
Thank
gets
you.
the last question in the press conference.
You've been so kind. It's sorry to see you go.
Thank you.
Really gonna miss you.
Feeling is mutual. You could argue that this is not a surprise when you look at the developments of the past 5 years. You know, really since shortly after that 2016 CBA, there's been a lot of chatter on their side. I'm wondering if you regret having done, understanding it takes both sides, regret not having done more on your side to try to avoid this disastrous outcome.
Yeah, look, what I would say, Ken, is, you know, we did take a stab at some early negotiations. Throughout the 5-year period, there was a lot of rhetoric about dissatisfaction with the deal that they made. A lot of the rhetoric was negative with respect to clubs, the commissioner's office, me. You know, that environment someone else created. And it's an environment in which it's tough to build bridges.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Once again, breaking news here on SportsCenter. That is Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred announcing that the start of the regular season has been canceled after the owners and players union could not reach a deal before today's deadline at 5 p.m. Eastern on a new CBA. This was the opening day lineup scheduled for March 31st. Once again, Manfred announcing that Major League Baseball is canceling the first 2 series, a total of 91 total games. And you see what was scheduled there, Phillies, Astros, Sunday Night Baseball, supposed to be a special opening day, of course, for March 31st. Jeff Passan is back alongside baseball insider Tim Kurkjian and Sunday Night Baseball's Eduardo Perez. Jeff, let's start with you. What stood out to you from what Manfred had to say there? And I want to also say that's the Major League Baseball side. We will hopefully hear from the Players Union later on tonight.
Yeah, Kevin, the players plan on holding a press conference at 6:30 tonight. From Rob Manfred, it was a couple of things. I've already heard from multiple players about him saying the last 5 years have been difficult revenue-wise for us. As one player said, from what I recall, COVID started in 2020, not 5 years ago. And beyond that, it was him talking about the consideration of fans being at the forefront of Major League Baseball's thinking. It was interesting to me that on the day he canceled regular season games in a lockout initiated by Major League Baseball, that the concern of fans was at the forefront of his mind.
You know, the commissioner was also asked about the entertainment option and how it's different in this day and age compared to the strike back in 1994. Let's bring in Tim Kurkjian. Tim, how damaging are today's events for the sport here long term?
Well, Kevin, I'm really concerned about the game long term. I mean, coming into this offseason, baseball was in a really bad spot. Attendance is down, ratings are down, interest is down in the game. I love the game more than anyone, but people out there don't love baseball like they did, say, 20 years ago. And now we're looking at a potential long lockout that could cancel a whole bunch of games. 2 months ago, I had a source tell me, look, the owners are going to do what they want to do. And if they play 140 games, they're going to be fine with that. We're going to start on May the 1st. That's what I was told 2 months ago by someone who kind of knows. Well, now we're to the point where if we play May the 1st, we have to be happy about that. Because at this point, with no meetings scheduled, this could be longer than May 1st, and that really scares me, and it really should scare the industry, which cannot afford this at a time when people have all sorts of other things to do with their money and their time.
And by the way, the union's heading back to New York, according to Manfred. So we will see if they continue to resume talks. Manfred also saying that the last 10 days is when the conversation started picking up, specifically the last 2 days. Tim, how does this get resolved? Especially when it felt like they were making some progress last night. The deadline was extended till 5 p.m. today, and it feels like we've made very little ground, and the animosity remains.
Well, they have to get in a room again, and Rob Manfred said we can't do that until Thursday. Well, they need to do that on Thursday, but chances are that is not going to happen, and every day that goes by, more regular season games are canceled again. This is really worrisome, and if it goes, if an impasse is declared and then they implement the last deal and this ends up in a court, then we're in really big trouble. Let's hope it doesn't come to that.
It is really ugly times as well with the sport in the future. Eduardo, let's get your reaction, considering you were a former player. You understand from one perspective. What's your response to what Manfred said and the idea that baseball has canceled the first 2 series of the regular season?
I'll tell you what, I'm disappointed. First and foremost, even having been a player, players are fans. They want to see baseball back on the field, and it's unfortunate on both ends that after being locked out on December 1st, it was the last, as Commissioner Manfred said, 10 days that they worked hard at it. I didn't even think he had an answer for why wasn't it done before. The bottom line is we thought we had momentum yesterday, but they just ran out of time. And I'm hoping that Thursday they continue these talks and they're serious about, as the more games that the players miss, it's more on the economic side. Yeah, there are definitely a lot of players that are making a lot of money, but there are players right now that are in their 30s that have not made a lot of money, that, as Marissa Tomei said once, their biological clock is also ticking, and they want to be able to get as much as they can on that field. And so you have the balance of the young players that, yes, there's a pool now out there that's being offered to them, but what happens to those middle-tier players, those mid-tier players that are in their early 30s that understand that the game might be passing them by if we wait this much longer. But I feel for those vendors. I feel for those restaurant operators. I feel for those hotels, for the travel industry, and most importantly for the fans, because this game is built upon the fans watching these games.
I'm glad you mentioned that. The stadium operators as well, and those businesses that revolve around 81 home games over 5 to 6 months. You grew up with baseball. You were in the clubhouse as a kid. What's your message to both sides right now? As a guy that, I mean, you eat, sleep, and baseball was a part of your life as a player, as a guy that was in the dugout, as a guy now who's a broadcaster.
Yeah, I grew up around it. I mean, it's what's put a roof over my head my entire time. I've gone through lockouts as a son of a major leaguer. I've gone through lockouts and strikes as a major leaguer. And now to go through this as a broadcaster and always as a baseball fan, it's about let's go. Let's try to get on the field as quickly as possible, because at the end of the day, we had 1998, the home run race that got baseball back. That's what always everyone goes to. We don't want to have that happen again. What do we need to lean on to try to bring baseball and the fans back? We want the fans and the ultimate love affair that I've had since I was born to continue with the young generation of at least getting them into the ballparks, watching their heroes on TV, on their phones, however it may be. But at the end of the day, we need those heroes and those star players to play in postseason. That's why I was really surprised that the players didn't really lean towards the 14 games. I understand the passion, I understand the competitive side of it, but at the end of the day, I want those star players playing in the postseason.
Depressing day, no doubt about it. And the fans, it feels like the fans are playing the role of the kids going through a divorce. You just want mom and dad to get along and figure it out, because the kids are suffering. The fans are suffering in the middle of this fight in between both sides here with no end in sight. And of course, Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred announcing that the start of the regular season has been canceled. That is the first 2 series. That is 91 total games, as the owners and the players union could not reach a deal before today's deadline of 5 p.m. Eastern. Guys, I appreciate your perspective here. Of course, Tim, Jeff, and Eduardo, you guys are the best. More from you guys coming up as SportsCenter continues at 6 p.m. live. We will have the Players Union reaction at 6:30 Eastern on SportsCenter Live. Right now, we've got PTI, Tony, Mike, and their reaction to baseball canceling the start of the regular season. We'll see you at 6 p.m. Eastern.
Pardon the interruption, but I'm Mike Wilbon. It's